Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to take another look at HTML. This video is part of a larger series of videos that focuses on the introduction to HTML and CSS. And specifically in this video, we are going to take a look at HTML tables. Now, I have pulled up a couple of links from the W3 schools that I want you to take a quick look at. That starts with the HTML table tag. That is what is going to allow for us to create the base or root element of a table. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use combinations of a TR tag, which is for a row, a TD tag, which is for a cell, and a TH tag that is for a special type of cell known as a header cell. Now go ahead and take just a second to go ahead and pull up these links because we're actually going to use them a little later in the video. And we're not going to worry too much about any of the attributes associated with these tags, and we're not going to spend too much time styling the tables yet. We're going to save that for later videos. Instead, what we want to do is we want to focus on the most basic structure. And so I'm going to go through two examples involving the table, the TR, the TD, and then ultimately the TH tag. And so to begin with, you can see here that I've started off with a sample underscore 08.html. The name of the file doesn't really matter too much, but we're going to go ahead and add a H1 tag to this, and we're going to call this our introduction to tables. And specifically, we are going to start off with, as I said earlier, our table tag. And we're going to jump straight in it by simply adding a TR element. Now, it turns out there's actually three different ways that we can go about doing this. We're going to focus on one of them in this video. We're going to take a look at other options later on. But then inside of the TR tag is where we are going to put our cells that represent the individual pieces of data. Now we're going to start off with the TD tags, and I'm actually going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit in that I know that I want to have 3 columns of data. So for each row, I want to have 3 cells in them. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste the TD tags. You can do these individually or you can do them in bulk. It kind of helps me a little bit to do these in bulk because that way, if I accidentally get the number of columns wrong, it's easier to identify when I'm building my structure. So for instance, you're going to discover that you can, for instance, have 3 cells in one row, 2 cells in the next, and 4 cells in another, and so on. So it's just good to go ahead and start with the structure to begin with. And again, what we're going to do is we're simply going to populate each of these rows with 3 cells. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an entire copy of the row, and I'm going to sort of just keep this as a placeholder in my buffer so that way as I add more rows, I simply copy and paste, or rather just paste, then the rows. All right, so let's give this a shot. We're going to go ahead and populate this. You're going to discover that humans make absolutely lousy random number generators as well as name generators. And in this case, you can tell here just by using the first name John. Letter S is probably going to be a middle initial, and the last name is Smith. Now, I'm doing this in such an ambiguous and almost confusing way for a reason, and that is to highlight the fact that you have no idea what data is in this table. Now, we're going to come back to that again. We're going to look at a number of different ways that you can handle this later on, but the idea here is that I'm going to have a row with 3 columns in there with the first name, the middle initial, and the last name for this first example. And again, I'm just going to come down and do the same thing now with the next person here. So Sally E. Jones, and then let's go ahead and add a third one in here. Again, keeping the tags lined up so that it looks nice and neat. Although remember, that is technically just for the developer or just for the person that's reading the HTML. It doesn't really affect how it's going to be rendered. And then let's go ahead and use one more here. How about Joe R. Jones? Oh, too many Joneses here. Let's try something different. As again, I told you that humans are absolutely lousy random number generators and random name generators. And there we go. We've got 3 names here to work with. I'm going to come over here now to my folder that has all my files in it. I'm just going to click on my sample underscore 08. And you can see here, it's a very, very plain, very boring looking table. As a matter of fact, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you couldn't even guess that it was a table. But sure enough, if you do Control U, you can see there's the table tag, the closed table tag, the individual rows, open and close rows, and then the individual cells. Now, let's do something to make this look a little bit more like a table. And again, we're going to cover styling these in later videos. For right now, we're going to focus mainly on the structure. But what we can do is we can do some very basic styling by coming here and doing a couple of different things. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the style attribute, and we're going to specify the border name and property. So in this case, I'm going to keep this one pretty simple. I'm just going to start off with a double border. Again, as I've mentioned in a couple of other videos, it's not good to style directly in line, or let's just say it's not preferred in certain scenarios. We're just doing this so that we can see our table a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to come back over here to my HTML. I'm going to refresh, and now you can see that my entire border, my entire table has a border around it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to my HTML one more time. And then for each of the individual cells, I'm going to follow suit with another style attribute. And also, I'm going to go ahead and do the same border. So border colon double. And you can probably guess now why I'm making the comment that it's not good to have this in line, because you can see here just with this simple example that we have a lot of places where I have to make a change. Now, again, you can do inline style, and we'll talk about the differences in later videos. But for right now, we're just doing this so that we can quickly build our table and have it look decent. And you can see here that now I have borders around each of the individual cells for that first row. And then if I come back over here to my source, I'm just simply going to follow up by doing the same thing with the rest of the cells. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering why I didn't just go ahead and include that in with the first template. And the answer is you probably should have. But again, as we're kind of evolving this and going along and learning this, we're going to make improvements, and we are essentially going to make mistakes. So again, I've added borders to all of my cells. I can come back over here and I can refresh that. And again, it looks like a table. Maybe not the best looking one, but at least it has borders around each of the cells. And I encourage you to play around with the border type. Double may not be the preferred choice. However, you'll notice that it has no information about what is actually in the table. And again, that was kind of intentional. I just started off with putting information into a table, into a structure, didn't really specify what the information was. And again, there's a couple of different ways that you'll see that we can go about doing this. But let's improve on this first table, and let's make a second one by adding a little bit more information to it. In this case, something that can describe what the individual columns are. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in a BR tag here, although technically I am abusing it just a little bit. I'm just using that for a separation between my tables. Turns out with styling, there's going to be other ways that we can go about doing this. But for a little bit of variety, I'm going to create a second table. I'm going to go ahead and add a row to it. But this time around, I'm going to go ahead and specify a head element or a header cell. And let's not make the same mistake we made the first time, in that this time, let's go ahead and style the table border so that we can actually see it. And again, for a little bit of variety here, let's change up the style. I don't know, you can play around with this as well as I can here. So let's try, let's do groove. That seems like a nice variant here. And again, what we can do is we can do the same thing with our style on the table head. Again, go ahead and put your space there. Oh, I appear to have lost it in my buffer on accident. Let's try that one more time. There we go. And there we go. And what we're going to do with this particular one is we are again going to have our 3 columns, but this time around, we're actually going to have some header cells as well as the table cells. And so what we're going to do is we're going to follow this up with a TR tag and then now a TD tag. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my style in my TD element. So that way I already have that correctly styled. And I'm going to copy and paste a few times here. And at this point, then I can just go ahead and duplicate the entire row. And I'm only going to do this one more time here because we don't know how big we're going to make this table yet. And I see that some of my coloring here for my style, or rather for my IntelliSense, is broken. May simply need to refresh my document by closing it and opening it back up. But just in case, make sure that we don't have any problems here, I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to just simply go ahead and refresh my page, and you can see a rather silly looking table here. In other words, it almost doesn't even look like a table. It looks like some sort of game piece or something along those lines. But inside of each of these individual cells then is where our text is going to go. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to have a little bit of fun with some of the links from the W3 schools for this particular example. And then I want to build a table with information about the links that you would use to create a table. And so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to specify the tag in the first column. I'm going to give a brief description in the second column, and then I'm going to provide the link in the third column. And again, there's a couple of different ways that we can go about doing this, but to demonstrate that we can include not only the head information or the header information that tells you what's in each of the cells, but also then we have the ability to create a hyperlink inside of a table cell. Turns out you can create any number of elements inside of a table cell, although there are some limitations. It is pretty flexible. So let's go ahead and get started with our HTML table tag. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this just so that we've got this for our description in just a second. And I'm going to come along then in my first row where I have my table head, I'm just going to put tag in the first cell, description in the second cell, and then link in the third cell. I'm going to save it. I'm going to come back out to my web browser, and I'm simply going to go ahead and refresh this so that we can see that now I'm starting to build a nice little table. And I think you can guess what's going to go in each one of these rows. So let's get one of these done. We'll start off with the table element itself. And so this tag right here is going to be just simply table. The description is going to be a HTML table root element. And then for the third field or the third cell, I want to have a tag. And as a matter of fact, why don't we go ahead and split this so that it looks a little bit better. And we're going to have an href, in other words, the link that it's going to point to. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And then for the description, I'm going to have the HTML table element or table description that we saw in the document. Now, we'll come back in a later video and I'll show you how to exception out those angle brackets. For right now, we're going to assume that we can't do that. It turns out there is a way that we can go about doing that. And for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on populating this href. And we can come back over here one more time, which is why I was recommending that you go ahead and link these pages or open these tabs up, and that we'll go ahead and copy this URL. We're going to come back over to our document, and we're going to simply paste this then into the href attribute. Go ahead and save this, come back over to your web browser and simply refresh this. And now you should have a nice little table beginning that describes how to put a table together. Now, you'll see the first one is going to be text, the second also text, and the third is in fact going to be a hyperlink that points to the W3 Schools site. Now, we can get a lot fancier with this, but I'm going to again keep this one pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of copies of my TR element. I think you can guess now that I should probably have two more, one for the TR, one for the TD, and one for the TH. what order you do this in doesn't really matter too much, but we'll start off with the TR element, which is going to be a HTML row element. And we're going to put the descriptions in, and then we'll come back to the links just to do them all at once. This is going to be the TH, which is going to be the HTML header cell. And just to keep consistent here, I'm going to go ahead and make this lowercase r. And then for the last one is going to be the TD, which is going to be the HTML data cell. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to simply come back here and we're going to populate each of these third cells with our hyperlink. And again, I'm just trying to keep consistent. Consistency, again, doesn't really affect the browser. It really helps just with the development. So we're going to insert then an ahref. And you'll notice a couple of tricks here that I'm doing to speed this up. I'm simply going to copy and paste my entire ahref element and then go back and modify it. So again, we're going to come back over here to our web browser. We said we were going to do the TR tag next. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this over inside for a description. We're again going to go ahead and delete out the angle brackets for right now. And you can almost guess what the other ones are going to look like. So if anything, what we're going to do is we're simply going to cheat a little bit here. We're going to replace this now with the TH and then ultimately with the TD tag. Again, I'm just removing the angle brackets for right now. Now let's go back and let's add our hyperlinks for the respective tags. And again, if you are very careful, you'll notice here that we can actually cheat again. You'll see the pattern for the W3 schools is tag underscore TR, tag underscore TD, and then ultimately tag underscore TH. We're going to leverage that, take that, make that to our advantage here. And we're going to come back in here and we're simply going to do a little bit of copying and pasting in here. For the first one is the TR tag. The second one is going to be the TH tag. And the third one is going to be our TD tag. And now we can go ahead and save this. We can come out here to our web browser one more time, and we can simply refresh this. And you'll see that we are starting to build now a nice little description of all of the elements that we are using. Now, a couple of things that we didn't yet talk about is you notice between the first table and the second table with the addition of the TH cells, we also got a little bit of styling for free. In other words, the browser recognizes the TH element and will style it a little bit differently. You'll notice here my font is a little different than an element inside of the table itself. So in other words, a TH element is going to be styled by default a little different than a TD element. However, you'll notice again, if we look at the code behind, there is going to be no difference between a TH element and a TD element. We can, of course, impose a style on the TH element and on the TD element, which in addition to separating out the header elements from the data elements is actually in one of the things that we're going to take advantage of when we start looking at style. And then the other thing to notice here is that all of my tags are listed as being linked already. In other words, we've already clicked on them. And you've noticed that my table has grown based on the size of the text in the individual cells. The reason I point this out is we are not as much interested in the style as we are the structure. And so the idea is later on, we can go back in addition to changing the borders for each one of the cells. We can also go through and change the color of the text, including the color of the hyperlink text. Turns out we can do a number of things, including even going so far as adding images. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here because we've got quite a few things to cover with respect to tables. And this is just sort of a basic introduction to tables with the four or arguably the three most important elements. That is the table element, the TR element, and the TD element. And as you see with this example, the TH element is technically optional. So hopefully you found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.